beginning of a very exciting new year, one we hope is going to bring us all the good things we would like for ourselves, which we know is going to require some effort on our part, and also some good fortune in the realm of the universe supplying some of the ingredients that we need to make what we want to have in this life for this year. So we're going to look at 2023 from an astrological perspective using the outer planets. Some people like to look at the year itself. 2023 adds up to a 7, and then some numerology people say add 1, and then you get the number 8, which is all about the 8th house of the zodiac, which is Scorpio, which is about power and money and materiality. Now, it also can be about, on a deeper level, a deep understanding of the occult, the hidden nature of each of us. Who are we really apart from the surface levels? And when you get beyond we want to make money, we want to spend money, we want to have all the materiality that we want, and it starts to feel either rewarding or hollow. In either case, you want to get a little deeper and take a look at what makes up your own individual psyche and how you connect to the deeper psyche of the world at large, your immediate family, your neighbors, and the world around you. Everyone has a different attitude about how connected they want to be to the vicissitudes of global affairs. Scorpio is very focused on its own personal sphere of influence, you might say. But when you look at what we're able to accomplish, a lot of that depends on what's going on in the world around us. So if we're going to look at the outer planets, we're going to start with Pluto. Pluto was discovered in when was that? 1930. It takes 248 years to get around the zodiac. Spends about between 12 to 31 years in each sign. So what that means for those of us living our lives is that it's a very slow transit. It's the kind of thing where if Pluto, which is a very intense, transformative energy, it is the natural, one of the rulers of Scorpio, the other being Mars, but it is the one that really brings you right down to your essence and then blows it up, and then you get to rebuild yourself. So it's very much the phoenix rising from the ashes, and that can be, unfortunately, kind of an unpleasant experience. But there's also that kind of exhilaration as you start to identify that maybe what you're getting rid of in your life are energies and patterns that are not serving you any longer. They may have come from your parents or your culture, and that you're now discovering what it means to really be you within that context, and how much you have to shake off your culture or your family's influences and belief systems and dogmas in order to become who you are according to your inner understanding of your own patterns and who you want to be in this life, what kind of human being you want to be. And we all hope that we come to an understanding that is going to be kind and helpful to each other and to ourselves. And that's the challenge. When Pluto's in the process of breaking things down, it's not very comfortable, and it has been working very hard in the 10th house of the world affairs. The 10th house is the Capricorn house, and it likes to set up structures, and when Pluto comes along, it will break down those structures. So it'll break down governments at all levels, and it'll break down the structures of how we believe we should behave, and it'll break it down to its essential elements. And then we get to really look at it as it's being broken down, and then we get to put it together in a new way. And each time that happens, we hope that we come up with a more humane and more loving and more egalitarian system of relating to each other. But it is up to each and every one of us to make that personal journey, because we're each a part of the whole. And if we don't, as individuals, face up to our own limitations and our own pockets of hidden truths, then the world as a whole is held back. So those influences, if you are a Capricorn person right now, if your sun is in Capricorn, it is at 23 degrees Capricorn. It's been there for a while. It's going to stay in Capricorn a little bit longer. So if you are a Capricorn, or alternately a Cancer, because it's then opposing you, and then it's also square, which means it's putting pressure on anyone who is Aries or Libra. They're going to be really deeply challenged by this. The experience of someone who's got Pluto right on top of one of their personal planets, and if you've got your chart, you can look that up. If it's on top of something personal, then you're going to feel like you're being really pressured, really kind of like the pressure that takes coal and turns it into a diamond. We love the part where we become a diamond, so hold on to that if you're experiencing that kind of transformative pressure where Pluto is saying you have to become someone different and someone other than who you are. On a global level, on a national level, what's happening is that governments that are repressive, that are authoritarian, are being put under a lot of pressure to change their ways. And part of that is that information will become more readily available to the average person, because if we are at a stage where we can trust our governments at different levels and we feel confident that they're doing right by us, then there's no transformation needed. When Pluto when it went into this house, a lot of government malfeasance was uncovered, and it is continuing as we speak, as people are looking deeply into the structures that run our lives, that we empower to run our lives by voting in a democracy, or if we're in a dictatorship where people are challenging the dictator's right to control their lives. It's an enormous struggle when it happens on the personal level or on the global level, but it is one that is ongoing. And when it comes out of Capricorn and goes into Aquarius, and I'll just say when that's going to be, it's going to start heading into, for the first time, Aquarius, which is the house of groups and friendships and aspirations. It's going to do that January 22nd. It'll go in there for the first little bit. And it does something called going retrograde, which is very much a geocentric. In other words, we on the planet looking up, we perceive planets as going backwards. They, of course, don't do any such thing. But our perspective astrologically, using it as a tool for self-understanding and growth, we perceive it that way. Therefore, that's its impact on us. And it goes back and forth over certain pressure points, both personally and globally. And through that, growth has an opportunity of happening. So it's coming into Aquarius, and then it's going to go back and forth. And by the end of this year, it'll be back in the last degree of Capricorn at 29 degrees. And what that indicates is by the end of this year, we should be seeing some resolution coming in terms of a lot of the global pressure and personal pressure on changing how we relate in a very official way in our structures of government. The problem with that is that if we haven't done our work, if we haven't really been proactive, then when a planet leaves a sign, whatever we're left with is what we are going to be dealing with until the next transit. So it's the sort of thing where you want to do the work, and even though it can be very daunting at times, you want to make sure that when you leave that field of endeavor, that you've done everything you can, because what you get at the end is what you have to live with. So if you're overthrowing a dictatorship or standing up for freedom within a democratic country, you need to do whatever work you can do to help make sure that that freedom is yours and available to everybody. So it's a bit of a challenge, but this year is really, we're coming to the end of a lot of the really intense transformations that have been going on in these different levels of government. And then it's going to go into Aquarius. Now, what's very interesting about this is Saturn has been in Aquarius, and Saturn is a planet of restriction and calcification, meaning that people get very fixated in their ideas. So Aquarius is kind of an androgynous energy. It really is, the original intention is to be humanitarian, to be supportive of all of humanity. Now, in the process of that, it tends to be focused in groups. So what we find during Aquarian times is that the rights of groups become very, very important to these different groups of people. And when Saturn's in there, people's attitudes and values become really rigid, and they're in the service of wanting to be free and independent and equal, and yet there is that emphasis on being dogmatic and rigid in how this is accomplished. So it's a time when, if you want to promote your particular group that you feel hasn't had its say in life, then this is a great time to take that on, but to remember that the impulse of Aquarius is always one of fairness. And if you're not promoting your group in the context of wanting all other groups to also have their rights respected, which is an enormous undertaking, it is not easy at all to find that balance where everyone's rights are respected, none are denigrated or held back. It's an enormous challenge, and we can see this playing out daily as people are fighting for their group's rights to be heard. And it's a real challenge because there is such a rigidity when you are dealing with Saturn. Now, Saturn is a very dictatorial energy, and Aquarius is an air sign, so it is very, very focused on its ideas, and it can be incredibly dogmatic. But when it comes through that, once it's worked through it, and it does need to be challenged because it likes to get really comfortable in its belief system, and you do have to get, in a loving way, you do have to get very clear when you're dealing with belief systems that they cannot be elevated to a place where they crush other people's belief systems. So it's an ongoing, lifelong challenge. But when Saturn comes through there, it shows a time when there's a certain authoritarianism, a certain dogmatism in attitudes and belief systems that we need to challenge. And the way to do it is to always bring everyone's focus back to the heart and soul of Aquarius, which is fairness for everybody, equal rights for everybody. That is the essence of Aquarius. And when Saturn comes out of Aquarius, then that is hopefully what we will see having been established, is that the rights of people who've been marginalized will be promoted, and but within the context of the rights of everybody being recognized. A big challenge, and not something we do in one generation. What we find is that it flip-flops back and forth. But hopefully we're making strides as we go along. Some parts of the world it seems more repressive than others, but still the battle continues. And we need to be kind to ourselves and each other, because the essence of Saturn, once it gets through the authoritarianism, the other side of it is wisdom. Because when you realize that authoritarianism is not the way to go, that you don't have the right to impose your value system and your preferences on other people, then what comes from that is wisdom and understanding. So it's the symbol of a wise and seasoned mind and heart that can understand that we need to balance everybody's rights. And it's a very, very difficult time to go through this on a personal level, because it can feel like you're being very, very restricted. Globally, it's certainly playing out very dramatically, and all we can do as individuals is to keep asking of ourselves and each other that we focus on fairness and kindness. And Aquarius always has at its base a humanitarian urge, a desire to make sure that everybody is well cared for and looked after. So the next thing we want to look at, and Saturn, I did want to say, at the end of this year, we'll have moved into the House of Spirit. So we will then be looking at a resurgence, I believe, of people recommitting to their spiritual lives on a very individual way. It's not the house of religion, organized religion or philosophy. It's the house of personal spirituality, of people recovering their own personal connection to whatever spirituality means to them, whatever their connection is to a wider feeling of being a member of the world at large, and whatever different levels you personally perceive the world to be made up of. Some people are just very focused in their senses. Others feel very much a call to different levels of consciousness. Whatever is true for each person, that's what's going to be explored much more dramatically and much more intensely once Saturn gets into the 12th house, and that's going to happen at the end of the year. So the next thing is Neptune, the planet Neptune, which is a fun planet, because some people, the modern astrologers, have ascribed its rulership to Pisces, and it was discovered in 1846. Takes about 14 years to get through each sign, so again, it's a slow transit. Any of the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, they move quite quickly. We're dealing with them on a regular basis. By the time we reach adulthood, we've gone through several cycles of them each, so we're getting quite adept at dealing with them. But these outer planets are more generational trends and global trends and national trends, and we're all still learning more at the same pace because the transit is so much slower. So with Neptune in the 12th house, it is bringing a lot of confusion and a sense sometimes of being betrayed, of one's own connection to the spiritual. So you'll see people are sort of floundering a little bit in terms of wanting to uncover their own spirituality, but it's a very deeply personal position for Neptune to be in, and it doesn't affect global structures in the same way as Pluto in the 10th house does. So it's much more personal. So that's going to be continuing in that house. So a really wonderful time for everybody to be really exploring what spirituality means to them. It also rules hospitals, and I think we're coming to a time where people are looking at the dissolution of some of our hospital systems as people are feeling that they are not really as solid and as effective as we thought they were. And it is a time when we're going to have to restructure a lot of our systems. That should be the prison system and the hospital system, both ruled under Neptune, as well as people's spiritual quest for their own individual path to spirituality. The next one is Uranus is in the 2nd house of personal resources, and that's a really tricky one. Uranus takes about 7 years per sign, so again, it's another slow-moving planet, and it's about halfway through Taurus right now, and it's in the sign of personal resources. And what we're finding is there's just a great deal of chaos in the money system because it opposes the money of others, which is the 8th house, and it's in the money house for each of us as individuals. And as we're trying to establish stability, Uranus just keeps throwing everything up in the air. As new systems keep being brought in, they're not stable, they're not supporting us. There's a lot of fear and chaos in the money systems, and it's going to continue. I think it continues for this whole year. Let's just see when it gets out of there. Yeah, it's still in there at the end of the year. It's got a little ways to go. So it's an enormous challenge, and all people can do is be conservative financially. It's not a time to take risks. I mean, if you come up with an opportunity and it feels 100% golden to you, then double and triple check, because Uranus is the sign that will throw a spanner into the works. Will at the last minute, some reversal will take place. So we're getting a lot of that chaos in our money systems right now. And it's going to be a while before it settles down. But it is in Taurus, so the best solution is to be conservative, to not take risks, to not get fed up and decide what the hell. That's not going to help either. You want to be conservative, set up stable and reliable money systems to whatever extent you can. And in terms of watching what's happening in the world, it's going to still be a chaotic year for all of 2023, which doesn't mean chaos every minute of the day, but it means instability and unreliability. And within that, we all are being challenged to be more stable and more solid and more reliable with our own finances. It's just not a time to be splashing out in big ways. Obviously, depending on your own personal level of financial stability. But the way to maintain that stability is to be conservative and make choices that you feel really confident in, and watch out for leaving yourself open to sudden reversals. You can't control the global nature of financial challenges. So all you can do is secure your own personal finances as best you can.